heart and soul of our work being ReServe. The heart and soul of our work is the individuals that drive ReServe at the ground level and make it work in seemingly, as Deb mentioned, with minimal resources. And so I wanted to engage these critical individuals in a conversation about that work. And we'll take it. We did some great preparation, and we know where we want to take it, and that was based on this primary foundational question. What do you think people are going to want to know? You know, that was really the frame that we set up our entire prep for this panel. So we've got some ideas, but if you have additional ideas, raise your hand and we'll go there. Is that okay, team? Okay, great. So the first question I want to ask, and let me just do a slight introduction. We've got Branden McCleod from Baltimore, Maryland ReServe. Great. We've got Kevin Donahue from our Newark ReServe. We've got Carol Greenfield from our Greater Boston ReServe. And we've got Dacia Steiner from our soon-to-be Southern Florida ReServe. And all of them are the very first affiliate directors. You can't say that very often, right? They're the first in their area. And so they had to imagine it, envision it, build it, right? They had to do all of those pieces of the puzzle. So what I'd like to ask you, and you can talk about this in whatever ways, but what have you learned? Let's just lay it out there. What have you learned? And you can focus on financial, you can focus on outreach and marketing, you can focus on partnership, but what have you learned? I think they're all on, but no, or maybe not. Great.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I've learned about the power of possibilities, and I just want to take this moment to say that I've been looking at this and see the Fedcap tagline is the power of possible, and I thought it fed in really beautifully to Ursula's remarks this morning. And I think we've learned that there are extraordinary possibilities for people to contribute at this stage of life. But it took a framework like ReServe as one of the important frameworks to really make those possibilities happen, to connect the people who want possibilities, who want new opportunities, with organizations that have needs, haven't really defined those possibilities until they interact with an organization with ReServe that can really make that happen. So
I'm going to pick up on Carol's point and ask her to do a follow-up. One of the things that you said on our planning call was that you were surprised to some extent about the amount of education involved in talking with community partners about what they really wanted. And I think that's really an important point.
Well, what I had said to Lori is when I was growing up as a young woman graduating from college in 1969, a woman either went into nursing or to teaching, and I went into neither. I went into public health, and for many years people would ask my parents, so what kind of teacher is Carol? And now I feel that I am playing a role in education, in educating community organizations about the wonderful asset that exists in the community, in people like reservists who really want to continue to do the kind of work that can really help communities and help themselves, as well as also educating reservists about the possibilities that exist for them. And I really think ReServe is one model that does that. There are other programs that fall into this encore space that are very important programs, and together I think we can make a big difference.
That's great. Branden, thank you so much, Carol. Branden, when you get a phone call from a community partner, is it always crystal clear what they want?
That's a good question. You hear me pretty good?
There you go.
Okay, there we go. That's a great question. And the question is, the answer is no. They don't always know what they want. A lot of times they think they do. But I feel like it's a formula in a way, because it's one way of sort of picking it apart and just kind of understanding what the organizational needs are. But I feel like even at the point where there's an opportunity posted on the opportunity board, and then they have a reservist come in and they learn what the capabilities of the reservists are, it changes again. So it's almost like you're reframing the job posting once they have that reservist sort of in the interview. Because all these other, wow, you can do this, oh, and you can do this, you can do this as well. So we have to kind of narrow it back down and say, okay, well, you said 15 hours a week, and you said you wanted events planning. They can't be a financial manager and different, but we can talk about that. So it's not always clear, but it's definitely an education process of sort of going back to the priority area for the organization.
That's great, thank you. So Dacia, do you want to respond to that, Kevin? Great.
Please, yeah.
Please.
To jump in on the education point, not only will, when I speak with a nonprofit leader for the first time, not only will they not always have a clear idea about what they're looking for, they don't even quite grasp what ReServe is. It's kind of a new animal. Are they volunteers? Well, no. So you're a temp agency? Well, no. And it takes a little bit of explaining to kind of even introduce them to the concept of who we are and what we do. And once we get over that hurdle, it seems to make a little bit more sense. And then we can start talking about the specific needs of the organization. But as a threshold issue, I'm always just speaking to the question of what is a reservist? They don't fit neatly into any bucket that nonprofit leaders are used to dealing with.
It's really true. So one of the things that comes out of that for me is the possibility of having some sort of a nuanced by jurisdiction, but standardized to some extent, set of bullet points about what in the world is ReServe. So we're talking about it out of a common language. So Dacia, that kind of leads us into the area in terms of what have you learned in marketing and outreach. Miami this is not meant to be pejorative for anybody from Miami. It's a tougher community in a lot of ways. I've learned from you about that, and if you can speak to the outreach strategies in that tougher community.
Well, Miami, everyone can hear me? Well, Miami is a very unique place, and I am not from Miami, and I'm from Chicago, and I had this dream to move to Miami, and I went down there over 10 months and just kept building a professional network of folks, and eventually found that they were launching a ReServe, and they had 3 criteria for somebody they were hiring: somebody over 55 who spoke Spanish and knows Miami really well. I don't check any of these boxes, but what I am is a really good salesperson. So, Anne gave me a shot, and I went down there, and I really had to learn. So in Chicago, you can make a joke like my mom calls me a socialist at heart. In Miami, you cannot make that joke because the Cuban community will run you out of town on a rail. So that was my first big blunder in learning about the Miami community. But it has been challenging. Miami is a unique community. 75% of the people in Miami are not from Miami. Now, whether they're from the global south or people like from Chicago, we have attachment to place issues. So we rank 50 out of 50 major cities in terms of civic engagement, volunteerism, and voter turnout. So, and a lot of our people are snowbirds. So how do you get somebody to volunteer in a school or in a local agency when they're not from that community?
How have you?
It has been a little bit of a challenge, but we have done a very good job. Obviously, a lot of the power of Debbie and Ann and our advisory council and them sort of networking through their folks. But one of the first things that I did was create a 14-page asset map. I literally spent hours just trolling through Google. I made lists of synagogues, churches, yacht clubs, country clubs, golf clubs, alumni association, Osher institutes, professional associations, anywhere where I thought the kind of people that I wanted to recruit would be hanging out would be. And we just systematically worked those lists and tried to form relationships with those groups to market for us. Our strongest relationships have been with Osher institutes, and we cross-promote for them, right? So we have to promote amongst our service for them to go take Osher classes, and the Oshers will let us come and do first impressions there. So that's been very nice. On the partner side, I have really hit up chambers of commerce. A lot of those folks sit on boards of directors, and you start talking about $15 an hour, and they start hearing return on investment, and they go back to their directors and say, hey, have you guys heard about ReServe? And our nonprofit sector is very involved in the chamber and in business in Miami because of the Hispanic culture. So that has been a very strong point for us. I don't know if that would work so well. I mean, asset mapping for ReService would probably be awesome, but I don't know about the leveraging chambers of commerce for you guys in terms of partners, but that's been pretty good for us in Miami.
I really love that, and the asset mapping is an interesting concept for a lot of reasons. And one of the things that we thought was really an important theme for this conference was the idea that ReServe is one in a series of options, all incredibly valuable for individuals who want an encore career. And the interesting thing is that we don't want to perceive ourselves as to be competing. We want to perceive ourselves to be part of this community of options and actually cross-referring whenever possible. So the asset mapping is a great idea for a lot of reasons. One of them is to know who else is doing similar work that we can partner with, leverage, and engage. And I think that's just a great idea. So that's I think, an important strategy. So what have you learned? Dacia alluded to this. I'm going to go one deeper and ask you, what have you learned about the art of not just engaging ReService, but I'll say matching, it's kind of what I'm looking for, but what I'm really interested in is making certain that ReService are able to tap the skills that they really, really want to tap. What have you learned about that? Go for it, Kevin. Yeah.
Okay, well, matching is an art and not a science. When we meet the potential reservists at first impressions is a kind of getting to know you, orientation, recruitment kind of session that we do on a regular basis. And every reservist or potential reservist gets to speak a little bit, not just about their professional skills and background, but about what really moves them, what causes or organizations really speak to them on a personal level. And I find that that is some of the most valuable time I spend in the first impression session, because I will receive their resume as part of their application, their formal application to ReServe, so I'll be able to see their professional background and some of their skill set, but to have an opportunity to really engage the reservist and at the heart of who they are and what they aspire to be, that is valuable. If you can find a match that speaks to them on that level, it is gold all around. And that could be a partnership that is fruitful and lasting and beautiful for both the reservist and the organization.
So, Carol, Dacia, or Branden, have you ever had some matchings that have gone completely sour?
Yes, I wanted to go back and just totally agree with Kevin on the first impression and how that's a great tool to really, first of all say, okay, I have a position in mind, and it's there, and then you go to the first impression session, you just listen to everyone's skill set, and say, I have a position that's for you. So I want to go back and sort of highlight that, and then I'll go back to the sort of downside a bit. Yes, sometimes it's not clear all the time.
Why it happens.
But I had a good person who had the exact skill set. An organization was looking for a bookkeeper, and this person had QuickBooks experience and had plenty of time in the field. But there was just a personality issue. Those are the hardest to deal with. It's not a skill issue, it's just a personality issue. And that person, I was the only person I had to replace or actually pull it out of a ReServe placement. It's just personality. See, it's hard to know that unless you establish a relationship. The first impression session won't do that, but you have to have consistent contact and sort of understanding the person's ins and outs, and also understand the organizational culture as well.
So that's actually a great tee-up question to you, Carol. What kind of consistent relationships do you have with reservists? Because on average, our reservists are placed for in a 6 to 9 month time frame. It could be a little less, but that's close. And so you're replacing, right? You're having a reservist come back and want another experience. And what kind of ongoing interaction do you have that helps educate you around the second and the third and the fourth?
Well, I don't think we do enough, to tell you the truth. I think we need to find ways to both connect on a more regular basis with our reservists, as well as to bring them together. There's an amazing power about bringing people together, and I can just see a few of our reservists have connected here today, and good things happen. They discuss the positives, they discuss some issues that may come up, and they bring us some solutions as well.
I love that.
So I think that we need to do more of them. We have had some gatherings we call ReServe Connections, where we basically put out a notice to our reservists, and they say drop in between 1 and 2:30 at a particular location. Not much of a formal agenda, but just getting to know each other and talking about some of the, the new opportunities and some experiences that people have had. But I do want to just respond one more thing, Laura, to the question before about the matching, the art of matching. And I think the word flexibility is what's really key. I think it's important to have on the reservist side and also to have on the partner side as well. And I think when you do see that flexibility, there's really an opportunity for the reservist experience to evolve. We had a reservist who was engaged to do outreach for a Big Brother, Big Sister program. She was there to recruit big sisters. They had, little sisters. They had a lot of big sisters at the time. She did a good job at that, but what the organization realized is that she was really good at vetting big sisters. And they evolved her role in a different way. And I'm happy to say after 14 months working as a reservist in that assignment, they came to us and said they wanted to hire her. So this is an evolution of a position based on both the reservist flexibility and that of the organization. So I think that's a universal characteristic.
Dacia.
Yeah, we noticed after the first impressions that we had reservists standing around in the parking lot chatting with each other for quite a long time, and so we've been a little bit intentional about this. We do try to put on some social events, facilitate things, and networking. We've done some trainings, and if you want to come redo your resume, we'll have somebody here to work on that with you. We had our first holiday party mixer for reservists at a local restaurant. We had about 45 reservists show up. That sort of led into, there were some single reservists there, and so we're making some speed dating things. And we have a lot of single reservists who are either lonely, and we want to facilitate those. But even
to get into the mission statement is going to be a lot of
well,
fun.
and when I was talking at my table, I was talking about one of the things that appeals to me about ReServe is the social capital aspect, and as a way to ameliorate mental and physical health issues for older adults, and ensuring that they have opportunities for meaningful engagement and making community connections. But I wanted to say something about the first impressions, and what I always say is when reservists come in, I say, look, reservists fall into roughly 3 categories. The accountant who wants to go and just be accountant anywhere, they don't care what the mission is, they just want to work a couple hours a week and stay engaged. The accountant who just is really passionate about animals, and they want to go be an accountant for an animal organization, and that's all they want to do, and that's the only kind of organization they're going to work with for $10 an hour. Or the accountant who says, I never want to look at QuickBooks ever again. I will go crazy, and all I want to do is work on art projects or dig in the dirt or do something with kids after school. And we really go out of our way to try and facilitate that opportunity for the reservist. And I tell them that when they're redoing their resume or completing their application, be honest about what you want from ReServe and how we can help you fulfill your encore dream. So, and we've extended that into sort of some social education issues or opportunities for them as well.
Dacia just triggered another potential idea as I'm listening. You know how you could go online and have a standard template for a resume, right? And the very first section at the top is usually objectives or what I excel at. It might be an interesting idea from a standardization perspective to say in that first section, tease out all your assets and skills that are transferable in other settings. Intentionally design your resume not to tell your professional story, although that's important, but to tell your encore story. And it might be an interesting way in which we structure our resumes. It could be a fascinating next step. So Carol, as we were doing our planning, you said something, and I wrote it down because I was intrigued by it. You said, so here's the deal, 10,000 people are hitting 65 every single day, and they will be till 2030. Sounds remarkable, but we know it's true. And you said that really that we've had a hard time catching up with the kind of innovative options that should be available for individuals with these kinds of skill sets. And I wonder if you could build on that more and then talk about how that learning is informing greater Boston research.
Well, I think this whole thing is evolving, and there are a number of people in this room who represent different model programs for engaging this same demographic. We have Betsy Worley here from the Encore Fellows Network, Doug Dixon from the Encore Boston Network. We're supposed to have somebody here from Executive Service Corps. There are other groups that are really trying to create specific opportunities for this very large demographic. And I think by working together with these groups, we can really expand both the number of people who are involved in these kinds of encore opportunities, as well as get the organizations that really need this talent to understand that there are resources available. I think one of the things that we can really make an impact on our partner organizations is to get them to think differently about how their work can get done, and how by tapping into one or more of these resources, they can really achieve their goals in a much more effective way. So I'm hoping that as more of these develop and that more people are aware of them, we'll really be able to move that forward.
So I wonder if you could, any of you respond to that. It's different than helping a partner agency think about how to use this ReServe. It's thinking about how to use a brilliant population of individuals differently to fill sourcing needs, whatever those might be. And it would be interesting to engage them in embedding that in their strategic plan. Have any of you done anything around that? Branden, yes, please.
We sort of toyed with it. You hear me pretty well?
Yeah. Close up.
We toyed with the idea a little bit. So ReServe Maryland is a part of the University of Maryland School of Social Work. And we have other programs that sort of support each other and so on. So there's this resource mentoring program. And resource mentoring existed before ReServe started. And what it did was it would work with the community partners, the nonprofits and public agencies, and give them an assessment of what their needs are to help them think through it a little bit more. And it's one of those tools that, it's not widely used, but it is helpful. And we try to toy with that a little bit. It's kind of hard to kind of implement that whole entire resource mentoring tool, because what happens is your board and your board of directors has to get together, and the executive director has to come together, and they have to do a self-assessment, and then they come with recommendations, and then they have to talk to, the resource mentoring project director. So we try to make it a smaller sort of tool, and actually have one of the research and program management student groups tweak it for ReServe's purposes. And it was helpful, but I think the more we think about sort of, instead of just a part organization coming on and saying, this is what we need, for them to really think deeply about how they can be creative and how they can best utilize the ReServe as our talent. I think that's the best way to go.
Branden, thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I just had a similar conversation, Branden, with a HR professional who was at ReServe in Newark, because that was something that I was seeing again and again. I would speak to a nonprofit leader, and they would see the value that ReServe could bring to their organization, but they couldn't always operationalize that. They couldn't translate it from, hey, that's a great idea, to, hey, here's how we're going to make it work. Let's put down some bullets on the job description for you to take action on. So I had a conversation with a human resources professional, and just kind of brainstorming about what that might look like. How could I tease out a little bit and help that nonprofit leader move from concept to action item? And that was kind of the same exact conclusion that she and I had reached, was that it is kind of a strategic moment for an organization to kind of rethink how the work is getting done. I guess we had kind of come up with maybe a half-day kind of strategic planning session, short, but enough to really get the real board or the senior staff and the executive director, or whoever the stakeholders, major stakeholders in the organization are, to really get them to kind of start rethinking how the work gets done. And that was kind of an exciting thing, because it was something that happened to me time and again.
Yes.
The nonprofit leader just saw the value, but just couldn't make it translate into something.
So, I love that, Kevin, and I'm sure there's other people in the room thinking the same thing. There's a marketing strategy right embedded in there. That we have community gatherings of a variety of not-for-profit and government organizations where we help them think through how to embed ReServe in their structure in a much more systemic and institutionalized way. I think there's a marketing process possibility there. Dacia, please.
Yeah, and we have, Linda Branden used to be with Westchester, and one of her pieces of advice to me when I first started was that she would go in and she would ask the nonprofit director, whoever she was meeting with, what's keeping you up at night? What's the one issue that keeps you up at night? And then go from there. So that is a framing question that I go in and we'll start with. And then
That's great.
They always try to add on 20 more tasks at the end because, they're a limited budget and you want somebody, to write grants and raise $1 million and plan their annual gala and all for 10 hours a week. But then we have done something like that. We haven't gone as far as helping them work through it, but through the chambers. Miami-Dade County has 33 municipalities and each pretty much has its own chamber. So we have gone some of the more active chambers, but they've hosted brown bag lunches for us.
Perfect.
They'll invite their nonprofit partners in. We'll do Panera or whatever, corner bakery and sandwiches. The chamber has actually sponsored that, underwritten the lunches for us. And we'll invite ReService in, and so we'll do, going back to speed dating, we'll let them sort of sit down with ReService. We invite different backgrounds, types of ReService, and let them sit down and have a few minutes with them so that they can see the types of expertise and professionals that they're going to get. Because one of the issues we have is this mental barrier about age, right? That you think retiree, and some people, certainly those in under 55 or 50, they think retiree and they think somebody frail and elderly. And when they come in and they need actual service, I mean, we had one of these lunch and learns where I brought, we had 8 partners, we had 4 ReService. All 4 ReService had opportunities, interviews set up when they walked out of that room. So, we have to combat some of that ageism in our work as well.
And I think the idea of building on that and translating it into an act, I love the idea of translating it into a placement, but translating into a deeper conversation about how might you embed this in your whole structuring of staffing and resourcing is interesting. Carol.
So I think the best way to promote the program widely is to get reservists in organizations and let them do their magic. We now have, I would say, 30% of our partner organizations have come back for additional reservists. There's really magic that can happen when there's a good placement. And I think that's when you can begin the discussion with an organization and how to go deeper within your organization. I know Jim Adler is here. He's one of our reservists who used to be a New York reservist, and he's been in a number of placements up here, and he keeps his ears open to opportunities, talks to the partner organization about how other reservists might be able to fill some needs, and then tries to, connect us.
I love it. So reservists are in fact marketing a side of organizations.
And if I could just say one more thing, in the last 2 days, really, Friday and yesterday, we had 6 new partner organizations register on our opportunity board. And I just checked last night. 2 of them were referrals from other nonprofits. I hadn't reached out to any of these. 2 of them were referrals from other nonprofits. 2 of them were referrals from reservists. And 2 of them were reservists from a foundation that doesn't even fund us. Can I just say?
Yay! Wow.
Now we have to fill the opportunity.
Yeah. I have a couple more questions, but we are truncating our time a little bit because we went over this morning. So I wonder if you might have questions of this esteemed panel, and if not, I have one more. But please, any questions? Please, yes.
I'm gonna put my hat on as
Okay,
CEO from making those calls to you guys. But about 5 years ago, the Reserve in New York held this large conference. Not a conference, maybe it was recruiting, whatever the term is. And they had reservists and also those who had organizations. And it was probably one of the best things that drew me to getting reservists was that here were the reservists, and as you say, you may have thought they was, but you saw vitality. there in the room, and also talking to colleagues, okay, you work with them, tell me more.
Tell me really.
And so that was a great thing that happened, and it was about 75 organizations, nonprofits represented there.
That's great. That's a great strategy. Thanks, Bill, so much. Any other question, please? That's it.
I have the privilege of being in New York City, which has very thriving reserve community and tremendous interest. And I know that one of the challenges is there are many people coming to first impressions sessions, and then there aren't necessarily placements. And so I'd love to have you, so a couple of questions. One is, could you give me a sense of sort of your total population and placements? And two, how are you thinking about activities that will sort of keep these people engaged during what might be a waiting period?
And I also want to invite Laura to respond to that too, in addition to our panel, please.
Yeah, we have about 250 active reservists. I mean, some of them drop off, and like you said, something in the presentation from Ursula this morning, where she had talked about the volunteers and the people who had got the training, even if they didn't have a volunteer opportunity, they went up, and the people who actually had been, they sort of went down, right? And I thought, this is something I've actually seen where we will, sometimes a reservist comes into the pool and we have the opportunity waiting for them, and they're in a position, in a couple of weeks, and sometimes somebody has come to a first impressions and we don't have a great opportunity for them for a year. And then we call them. We've actually had some reservists feel a little, salty that they didn't get something right away. And that was, I had this visual when I saw Ursula's dip, and I thought, that's the dip, this sort of, I didn't get this placement, I was rejected. So that's one of the reasons why we have created this, these social opportunities to try and keep them engaged. And we do, all of our partners, I always tell them, look, if you have volunteer opportunities, if you have programs going on, United Way is always looking for grandparent readers. We will send out a little newsletter, a little e-blast to our reservists and say, hey, United Way is looking for grandparent readers, or there's this program going on and they need volunteers for this. And we tell them, stay involved, stay engaged while you're waiting for that perfect opportunity to come along for you.
Great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on this waiting period?
So we have about, over the 2 years that we've been in operation, about 130 reservists who are active, and there's been about 65 different placements. And as Dacia sort of mentioned about if there's not an opportunity for them, and there's variability between, I've had someone who came in for a first impression session 2 weeks ago, and then they were placed the next week, and then we have people who came to the very first impression session who have never had a placement, and it just happens to be that way. But the fact that there are other opportunities available, indeed, we do send an email blast that says, this particular organization is also looking for for instance, Generations United was looking for a senior fellow in their DC office. Contact, Donna Butts at, Generations United, they're looking for a senior fellow. Or feeding, I forgot the name of the organization, but they were doing food stamp outreach and summer programs outreach. They were looking to bring some volunteers in for the Prince George's County outreach program. We'll send something out, and
That's
then
great.
the next week we'll have some more opportunities up. So we just want to continue to send things out to let them know that we are active and we're having these conversations, and that we are thinking about them. So.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that even if someone has a ReServe assignment, it doesn't mean that they don't want to volunteer or have a part-time job or do one of the other things that you've been telling them about. And I think that's one thing that connecting with ReServe and any of these other programs does for people at this stage of life. It makes them realize that they have an opportunity to develop a life portfolio. My colleague Doug Dixon here was instrumental in branding that concept of really putting together a whole portfolio of engagement and leisure and family and work
Nice.
activities that really are a description of how they're living this stage of life. So even with a reserve assignment, there are still many opportunities to contribute in different ways. And the more we can make our constituents know that ReServe is part of that whole network, I think the better off everybody will be.
Great, thanks. We're gonna have one more question from Lois, and then we have to end to get into our breakout session. So Lois, please.
This is a statement that follows up on Carol's statement, and that is people come in to ReServe with different expectations. And I was a provider that had reservists, so I've heard the other end. They come in, some come in to make money, and maybe reserve is not the right placement for them because they really want a job that's going to pay them full salary. Some come in with, they want to volunteer, and maybe they don't want the commitment. So I think there's a role that reserve needs to play around self-assessment, finding out why and if the person is coming in to really make a job, there's a referral. Because guess what? Reserve can't fulfill everybody's everything. So there could be, here are the agencies that do placement for older workers. Here are the agencies that place volunteers. So that, yes, it becomes a central resource, but it also becomes a referral agency so that you are serving people who really
Love it.
I just want to throw that in, because that's really an important, I saw the other end of it.
Yes.
And where people would complain, I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
And then, wait a minute, it wasn't meant to do that.
I really want to put a fine point on that piece, and that's that if you do the asset mapping, like Dacia talked about, and you really have a good, strong understanding of your community, then when someone comes in who doesn't want really to be a reservist but doesn't know what else to do, you become a hub. And there's nothing better than that hub in a complicated community. So I really think that's a great place to end on. Thank you, Lois. So let's hear it for this wonderful